Well, we're back again with the Unlearning Curve, the show where healing isn't always linear and resilience may be harder than it sounds. Today's question is, what does it really look like to keep going when life doesn't wrap up nice and neatly like a sermon? What do we do when things don't go the way we want them to? So, we're going to be talking a bit about resilience. Carl, how do you define resilience?
Well, so it's hard. I actually had to Google it today, so I did my research. I'm just kidding. Now I can't talk.
Webster's dictionary defines resilience as...
That's called the callback cough that you're bringing it back.
I actually went to a resilience conference not too long ago, and obviously I didn't learn too much. If I can't quote it, but I wanted to read from something I found online. It says, in essence, resilience is a trauma-informed community. In a trauma-informed community is a dynamic process where the community as a whole actively cultivates well-being, fosters connection, and works to create systems and environments that buffer against trauma and promote collective healing. It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of the individual and community well-being and working together to thrive in the face of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, primarily that it's like all this other stuff we've been talking about. It's relationship, it's bouncing back from things, but not just waiting for a magical solution. It's going to be a lot of restorative practices. It's going to be trauma-informed understanding along with that. So that's the best I can do right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it, like we talked about in a couple of episodes, it's also kind of pushing against behaviorism to where the kid didn't follow the rules. The kid didn't do what we expected. So we'll try something. If it doesn't work, then I guess they just didn't want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Behavior is communication. Behavior is not a choice always. It's not always a choice, but it is always communication of something. And so sometimes it communicates that we need some help. It communicates that we can be better, but it also has to communicate that it's hard. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think sometimes too, like the thing that hit me about resilience, sometimes I used to think of it as like, wow, people that are very resilient, it always sounded like they triumph over adversity. They just do this. They're always, bad things happen, but they just keep moving and they're always, moving towards winning kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes that's like that can be like the total, the macro view of resilience, because I think like dialing it in, sometimes resilience is getting up and brushing your teeth. Sometimes resilience is just getting up and just continuing to move on when you don't want to.
Yeah.
It can be something just as small as that. Just saying that I'm still here, I'm still going, and it doesn't have to be grandiose.
But it does have to be like a challenge. And this is one thing I think, and I'm of two minds about whether I celebrate the proliferation of like this kind of like psychological vernacular that is proliferated in society, because I think a lot of people use it as ammunition to kind of like get their way or to dominate other people. But I do think that it can be useful, but I do think, and I've seen this kind of in some of my students, that like, just to kind of put it, like they watch a little bit too much TikTok and they see these people being like, giving them like kind of like psychological explanations, or at least using the vocabulary of like psychology and things like that to like be like, well, you just don't, like, you can cut toxic people out of your life. You can just, like, no one can tell you what to do. Just be lazy. Like, you have the right to be lazy. Yeah. It's like, the sentiment is correct in that, but what it turns into, especially when you tell like a 14-year-old that, or like a 15, or even like I have 16, 17, 18-year-old students, if they're in the wrong headspace for that, they just go, well, like, you can't tell me what to do because like you're just trying to control me, and so like I just get to check out whenever the fuck I want. It's like, no, actually, motherfucker, you don't. Okay, because if you want to like live your best life, if you want to like be successful, which you say you want to do, sometimes it's gonna fucking suck. Like, and I gotta break it to you, And like that was like my thing for a lot of them in a lot of cases, and I really try to ride this line carefully because I don't want to be the fucking like old boomer that's just like back in my day. But it's like sometimes you do have to just like be like, part of it is just like you were saying, getting up out of bed. Like my kids are like, you look sad, you look like you had a rough day. I'm like, yeah, I did, but you know what I did? Like I got up in the morning, I told my dog to get off the foot of my bed. I was like, get the fuck out of here. And then I just I lift my bed up, clean my bed, get everything done, and I just go. And like, it doesn't happen every time, you know. Sometimes I'm late, sometimes I don't do it, but like, you do have to like push yourselves, and like, that isn't like, it isn't inherently trauma. Like, I do think that like, because we've proliferated these kind of verbiage, I think it is dangerous for some people because like they kind of overuse this kind of stuff. So that's where I'm at with this whole like discussion, is like I'm on that line where I'm trying to figure out like, when do I push people and when do I, and same for me, like when do I push myself and when do I go like, okay, you give yourself some space. But I do think there is an element of that where it's just like, sometimes you do have to pull yourself up, and not by your bootstraps, because that literally was a joke about like how you don't have bootstraps, because anyway, that's a whole different thing. But anyway, we have to push each other sometimes, and that's good. And if we can build community, we might be able to push each other in the right direction, and then be able to like be like, I know this guy has my best interest in mind, so I'm gonna go with it.
But I love how the core of all of that is relationship, and how we're talking about that too. Because I don't think that experiencing friction in life is part of just being alive. You know, I don't think everything is always going to go smooth. It's not always going to go the way we want them to. And I think that, like, at least for me, like, teaching my kids to be resilient is to say that, yes, this did not work out, but like, did you learn something? You know, or how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? Or maybe this was just dumb, but you're okay, and life can continue on. And so I think it's just, some of it's those patterns of giving people something to keep moving, but it needs to be done properly, like you're saying. I think in the context of relationship, and not little pithy things from TikTok where people may be like, "Oh, I had trauma today. I had to wait in 5 minutes for my latte. It was so traumatic." But yeah, it is funny. But I love how you said that. How we toss words. We do it too. We toss words around.
No, that's my thing. Is like, I want people to be very clear that like I do the same thing, and I do my best to try to not. But of course, we all do it. None of us are experts in all of these fields. You do your best.
It's community and relationships, but sometimes we have to leave toxic communities, toxic relationships, and find the right community. I was going to read through these 5 things that it mentioned, and I guess I should admit this is AI, but this is what I saw online.
By doing your own research with AI?
Yeah. Don't drive me back into that conversation. So it says, but trauma-informed communities, the right kind of communities, number 1, navigate and negotiate for resources. And I'm hoping you guys will comment on that. This includes psychological, social, cultural, and physical resources that support well-being. Community actively works to ensure those resources are available and accessible to all members. My immediate response to that is, in typical narcissistic-led communities or organizations, the resources are mostly directed towards the star, not towards the least of these.
Trickle up.
Yeah. And, it's what we can do to help them be successful. The mission of the church comes first, and so on, but we don't navigate and negotiate for resources for the people that really need them. The current administration, enough said. They doing the opposite of that. Go ahead, JD.
I was just going to say, with hierarchies, it's very hard to negotiate because someone has all the power. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. So what can we contribute to that? I can say, can help by recommending resources for them, to them. I could also just be an ally and speak up for them, and give them a safe place. Derek Webb's new Survivor Songs record has a song about why he wears nail polish.
Mm.
Derek Webb is a queer activist, and he wears nail polish. The reason he wears it is so he can get hints in society and community when he's with his gay friends of when they're in danger.
Mm.
Because I think I'm getting off track just a little bit here, but it's, I guess, kind of mitigating, which is the second point, but also just having resources for those people.
Well, it's a signal to other people that if they need your resources, they can come to you. Mm-hmm. I think that's what it is. And it's signaling, which is important. I don't know if you need to do that, but that's certainly one way that you could do it.
Mm-hmm. And it signals the other way too for people that are not safe.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get the reactions. You're going to know what kind of person they are just solely based upon how they react to nail polish. They'll tell you a lot about.
They get triggered by it. I've seen it. I've never had a black fingernail except for when I hit my hand with a hammer. literally heard that multiple times at a gas station where we used to have a guy that wore nail polish because he was like a goth kid. They'd be like, can you get a load of this guy? It's just like, okay, all right. You're a fucking psycho. Got it. Thanks.
The second thing was mitigate the impact of trauma. Understanding the widespread effects of trauma, the community possibly creates safe and supportive environments that prevent further harm and promote healing. Mm-hmm. How would you mitigate the impacts of trauma with other people in your community?
I mean, the best way is to prevent it. But, I mean, if you can't do that, then, again, you have to create a space where people can talk about it, first of all. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then from there, that's really complicated. Literally, people get PhDs in how to deal with. They become psychiatrists. Like, that's how you deal with it. It's incredibly complicated.
I think it's also just having like the community as we're using it would need. You would hope it would be filled with people that have some sort of an empathy with their own trash and their own trauma and their own stuff they've gone through. Because I think then it makes it easier if you're trying to help someone else heal, because you may not get triggered. If you can be like grounded in yourself, they may say something that is fueled by trauma or something else that could end up triggering you that does not help them. So I think being able to have kind of people of peace that know their shit or are comfortable in their own shit enough to be able to see this person's in pain, they need help, they may lash out, they may be nasty to me, but that's okay. And being able to kind of have that foresight to where like, I've been here before, I'm not an expert, but sometimes just being a person that's there to listen, to be around them, to give them alternatives to sometimes broken thought processes.
Yeah, instead of just saying we believe in behaviorism, where we give them a carrot and a stick, or we try something and it doesn't work, and then we say, well, they don't want to change, they don't care. Yeah. And then we just blame it on sin or evil or bad behavior. It's just bad behavior, and they're choosing that. Behavior is not always a choice, as I said before. So how can we help other people mitigate the impacts of trauma? Like you guys have said, maybe it's just listening to people and being there for them, and sometimes not saying anything.
And realizing this is a long game that we're playing.
Yeah, exactly. It's the hard stuff, yeah.
I'm going to do this. I mean, I'm going to compare a traumatized person to the cat that we rescued that now lives in our house. But it took time and trust for us. Like, we just had this cat show up in our yard, and then it would just hang out under the cars, and then it would hang out closer. And so some of it is like, there's a testing to all of this too. For people that have been hurt, there's a bit of a testing process, and they may not always act nice, and they're testing to see if you're safe as well.
Right.
And so I think some of this, oftentimes in church, where we want someone to be like, I'm giving you the correct advice. Follow it now. Yeah. I've given you no time to process this. You
didn't want to.
I just gave you a little nugget of wisdom. Yeah. And instantly you should take this, integrate it, and have no more problems.
Jump off the cliff.
Or you're just not a team player.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's process, and it's time. It's messy. But
to continue that like metaphor, you also can't just let the cat fucking gnaw your face off. Like,
true.
You yourself also have to be like, no, like, and you may not do it by like screaming, but you may be like, listen, like what you're doing right now is crossing my boundaries. And this goes back to what we were talking about before. I have these boundaries, you can't cross them, but listen, I'm here for you. And I understand that maybe you will cross my boundaries at some point, because again, like you just said, Stuart, I have experience with this where I've done that to other people. But again, it has to be, we have to start drawing these boundaries, but we have to have this open communication. But we also can't be afraid to point out when people are wrong, because again, you can't just, it frustrates me because you can't just let people just like do whatever they want. Like there does have to be some accountability, which I think it seems like we're kind of moving to these extremes in a lot of like the online discourse, which is not real discourse. It's just kind of meme wars and stuff.
JD, I think you're expressing number 3, which says build protective factors by fostering strong social connections, promoting safety and trust, and empowering individuals. The community strengthens its overall capacity to withstand and recover from adversity. Right. So again, it's communication and talking, listening, building in some safety there, considering your own boundaries, like JD's talking about. Right? And then the 4th one is address systemic issues. Trauma-informed communities recognize that factors like poverty, discrimination, and lack of access to resources can contribute to trauma. Resilience in this context involves working to address these underlying issues and create a more a more equitable society. Your thoughts?
No, I think it's, I think with understanding what causes it for a lot of people, but also I think we were mentioning, if the community that we're talking about, whatever kind of community you have that you've cultivated, it needs to also be worth defending. To some degree. I mean, that can get weird, but if you're able to, because you can bring people in that just want to take and take and take and take. And then at that point, they're not really part of community. We're just kind of doing, we're a totally different relationship at that point. Because the idea is, I would hope, would be to, like, integration, like to help in a path of healing, but also realizing that healing is, I mean, I haven't dealt with all my trauma, and I probably never will. But in my lifetime. But I think it's getting to that posture where we're working and learning as we go. But it needs to be something that balances out for everybody too, to where this doesn't become something to where someone just takes, and then we're back in an abusive situation all over again.
Well, and hopefully if you don't have a hierarchical situation, you should have everyone checking each other, and everyone's opinion should be as valid as the other. You don't have someone from the pulpit or from the stage going, no, my word is the law. You have Bill saying this and Susan saying this and whatever other fake names I want to make up. Like, we're actually all checking each other. I think it's a lot healthier way to deal with stuff, because we're all fucked up and broken. And like you said, we're never going to deal with all of our trauma. So we might as well like try to check each other, and we may fuck up sometimes, but if we have that community and we have that trust, we can get through it.
You guys kind of keep bleeding over into the next point. So very good. Healing and growing. The 5th thing is,
professionals.
Yeah, you guys are great. The last thing is healing and growth. Resilience is not just about returning to a pre-trauma state, but about the potential for positive change and growth at both individual and community levels after experiencing adversity. So once again, not just about regulation or just maintaining the status quo, but it's growing, healing, just really strong. Wherever I got this says it's a dynamic process. Right? Like you guys have pointed out.
It's from ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, it's the other one.
Oh, it's Google.
It's Gemini.
Whatever that.
Gemini. Oh, no.
I did say it was Google.
Okay.
It is Gemini. All right. My thing, this is the same thing that, and it's a good point, but this is the same thing that like frustrates me about this kind of proliferation of this like psychological language, is that that shouldn't be profound. But like for a lot of people, including like when I hear it, it's like, oh, that's profound. Like, wait, is it profound to say you don't want to be the same? You don't want to go back to the same person you were before you had your trauma? Like, is that profound? No, it's fucking not.
Mhm.
Like, of course I don't want to. I want to be a stronger person. I want to like learn from. I don't want to like deal with. I had trauma and I want to deal with it and just go back to my cocoon. Like, that's insane. But
We don't get to
that's
start over. And for a lot of people, that'd be what? What is it like? I'm back to being an infant,
yeah, exactly.
just born into the earth. But yeah, it doesn't make sense. But I think that. But the funny thing about this is, I think that learning and working through your own trauma does show you how like resilient we are as human beings in many ways to keep going, because a lot of the defense mechanisms and other stuff that we've been through, we did to survive, to keep going in bad situations.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think it's being able to also then have that perspective of looking back and not saying I want to bury it or ignore this or act like it never happened. Some of it's a good thing. That trauma it hurt you, but it also created the you that you are right now. You know, especially the you that's asking all these questions about trauma right now in some sort of a mental health journey. So, I mean, we need those to move forward. And it isn't like otherwise it's like we're asking to be lobotomized or something. Like, bring me back to the days.
How?
Yeah, a lot of community, though, has a built-in traumatizing aspect to it. Like we talked about before, sometimes the whole experience is bringing you into a conflict or bringing you into a crisis, so that coming out of the crisis or regulating, however you want to say that, then feels like a breakthrough. But I think the last point on there was it's not that. It's not just being dysregulated and regulated, but it's trying desperately to solve that long-term issue of let's stop doing this. Let's change systems. Let's do it different.
It's called working through the problem as opposed to just like feeling like you're done with it and can cast it aside. I also, this whole thing, like with kind of like every time I hear about like trauma and stuff, I don't know, maybe I've been too online for too long, and I've very much worked to like get away from that, because like I don't basically do anything online except for like post my photography anymore. But I also
JD.
deal.
You're just bitter.
I am a little bit bitter, but I also deal with like my students who I teach at like a pretty privileged school. But like part of me is like, we need to like deal with people where they are, and I'm not trying to be like this is worse than this, or like I'm not trying to create hierarchies of that stuff either. But there is a degree to me that when people learn, this is why it's all connected for me, is because people learn these kind of like psychological terms, and they go like, well, I was triggered, or like I dealt with trauma, and it's like you may have, and like I'm not trying to discount that, but at the same time, like I've dealt with people who have dealt with trauma, and it sucks. Like I've gone through it, so I know it sucks. But when some people would just be like, it's insurmountable, I'll never get over this, and they're wallowing in their self-pity, and I'm like, bro, there is fucking child soldiers. Like, there's genocides going on in the world. Like, you gotta buck up just a little bit. And again, this is another place where I find myself like trying to float this kind of needle between the two worlds, where I'm like, I don't want to tell people like, you gotta suck it up. But there is instances where I'm like, you're being a fucking whiny motherfucker right now. And you just, come on, we can do this. Like, I got you, and I promise, and I'll show you that I got you. And I think initially when that happens, yeah, you gotta be, I tend to lean towards the side of like having empathy and like, but there's also, and maybe this is like the fact that, and this is your fault, Dad, that you raised me conservative, but there is a little bit of me that's like, fucking, let's staple those bootstraps to the side of your ankles and let's pull them up, because we gotta we gotta get it going, because there's got to be more than this. Like we can't be losing our shit over, your Starbucks order not getting fulfilled or something.
Yeah,
I feel like
trivializing it.
Therapists kind of get caught in that sometimes. I think therapists get in that mindset of, well, I can name everything. I know what's wrong with me. And I just keep repeating that cycle. I keep telling my story and keep going through that loop, de-loop, and I can say what it is. But like we've said on so many topics, until you do the hard work, it's not going to get better. And you can't just explain to people over and over what's wrong with you unless you're willing to work at getting better. And it's hard first of all to find sympathy, if it doesn't feel like you're working on it.
Well, and no one wants to hear like, okay, the process of getting better, it's gonna be fucking messy, and it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back someday.
Some
You
days,
just don't
yeah.
know, and it's not linear. It doesn't totally move in a way, and it's not always like every day I'm winning. No, it's hard. It sucks. Like,
Right.
yeah, I mean, as someone who's like dealt with anxiety and depression a lot of my life, it sucks. But, through that, it can get better. And you can work on the way that you handle your trauma. You can work at making new pathways for your mind to move forward that are more healthy. And I think that it sounds like so churchy what I was about to say, but I think one of the reasons the needle that you're trying to thread, JD, too, is sometimes we love people too much to leave them where they're at.
Mm.
Meaning that, like, I care for you and I don't want to see you stop here. I don't want to see you quit and just eliminate this part of maybe your hopes and dreams or whatever you think about this, and you just go do something else. I don't want to see that, because when we comes from a place of saying, I've been there, I've been stuck, I've wanted to quit, I don't want to see you do that.
I think
And I think it gets easier as you build that community too, because people, they can realize, oh, you supported me through this. Now you're giving me a little bit of a push, but like, I know you're not just doing it to be an asshole, or you're, whatever. Sorry, Dad, I cut you off.
Well, one thing I was going to point out is JD has his own wind machine. It appears he has a breeze blowing across him for effect. Not only has he done the wardrobe changes, but he built in effects.
It's a whole fan right here. It's
But I
great.
was just going to say, without mansplaining to another man, did you, the question kind of is, did you become trauma informed just to bypass in a totally new and relevant way? Are you just using your trauma informed mind to bypass the hard work of getting better? Or are you actually trying to get better? Maybe not succeeding all the time. Maybe it's harder than you thought and you get frustrated and discouraged, but at least you're trying to progress and get better instead of just spouting a bunch of words.
I think go ahead, Stuart.
No, so it at the beginning of the process of when you're starting to heal, just having those words feels super powerful, like being able to name certain things that have happened. But I think sometimes people are like, cool, I'm done.
Right.
Now I just have the words. But again, that's just barely said. You're not even scratching the surface at that point.
The words are, it's important. That knowledge is important, but it's got to go beyond a head understanding of things. It's got to become a mind-body connection, which is hard work, and it's painful, and it's murky. It's difficult, just like all the things we've said.
Oh, it's also like, I think something that I try to remind my kids of a lot, because this is where I deal with like a lot of this stuff. It's most of what I do is like go to school and work, but telling them, like, they're like, I don't understand this, or like, it's tough, or like I explain a concept to them and they're like, oh, you're so smart. I'm like, listen, like the people that we're studying, they studied this for like 30, 40 years. Like, even my understanding is like surface level at best. And so like, if you feel like you're getting at something, that's good, but just realize you have to dig halfway to China from where you're at right now, but it's something to work for, and you'll feel like you get it. And you get constant, like, if you do start to work down those paths, that like the thing you felt about like, oh, I like understand this concept and now I can just apply it to everything. Well, it's like, once you actually understand the concept and you can apply it more, and then you read a book about it, like, it just gets so much more fruitful and it feels so much more better. And then it's also, I think, easier for us to be like, to understand when someone's like, kind of that, like, it's the same thing as like being a new Christian, where you're just like, I have all these, like, I want God to pour into me, and all these like weird, like kind of homoerotic phrases that the church uses. But anyway, you learn these phrases.
Fill me up,
but
Jesus.
Like, yeah.
Use me.
Jesus Christ. This is yeah. Anyway, but yeah, like but once you start, like, once you actually like start to deal with it, and it's not those just homoerotic phrases that we use, like, you actually learn these, like, this terminology, and then you realize, like, oh, that applies to like whole fields. And it kind of becomes like an actual journey, maybe a journey through the desert or some camping trip, or I forget the title of your book, Dad, but like that kind of thing. Sorry. But it does kind of like lead to that, hopefully. And it's fun. Like, it's interesting, and it's not always fun. It is like dramatic sometimes, but it's resilient. You build resilience through that by going, I get knocked down, but I get up again, and you're never going to keep me down.
That's prophecy.
That's good. It's pretty cool.
Well, I kind of feel like the Chumbawamba referenced me. Maybe.
Uma
Or high
Wamba?
mark right there.
There's another Chumbawamba reference that I want to sing, but it will get us blocked on YouTube, so I won't.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
It does
can
sound like
send
we're
you guys-
babbling when we're saying the word Chumbawamba. That's
I thought you were speaking in
If-
tongues. Sorry, I got distracted.
Chumbawamba.
They have a good song about, let's say, a certain regime in Germany and how it never went away and how we won't ever have peace until all of those people connect to God's Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I said that in a way that won't get us destroyed by the algorithm, but I can send you guys the song later. It's very good.
Mm.
It's okay. We're kind of on the bottom anyhow, so got nowhere to go but up.
All right, let's start saying slurs then. No, I'm just kidding.